and create lasting impact. And today I have my special guest. He's the CEO and founder of pplwise, an HR tech entrepreneur and talent strategist, and host of the podcast The People Factor, none other than Mr. Thomas Kohler.
Yes, hello. Thank you for hosting.
Welcome, Mr. Thomas, on Entrepreneurship 101, and let's empower our fellow podcaster. Let's empower people all over the world through our podcast. So can you tell me more about yourself that I know?
Yes, I'm Thomas Kohler, CEO of pplwise. I live here in Munich, Germany. And what I did 5 years ago was founding pplwise. It's a service business that is providing recruiters for mainly tech companies in different sectors that you don't need to use expensive headhunters that is maybe not so scalable, that you also don't need to have the limitations of a pure in-house recruiting team, because we all heard about the layoffs in the past years and the instabilities in the market or the market dynamics. And with us, for instance, you can just call me, write somebody from our team, saying that you have a certain need in terms of roles to fill. We do 50% go to market, 30 to 40% tech roles, and 10 to 20% of operations roles. Core and home market is Germany, but we also expanded with businesses into the US or from the US into Germany, for instance, and across Europe and other countries.
Yes, and thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world, Mr. Thomas. Thank you. Here on Entrepreneurship 101, we celebrate you. And today, let's talk about being you, being the CEO and founder of pplwise. You've been an HR tech entrepreneur and startup builder. What is the specific aha moment or pain point you experienced that made you realize the world needed people wise?
Yeah. So I would maybe not call me an HR tech entrepreneur directly. I would call me just really service business entrepreneur. I also have another software company, which is a tech company, but that's a completely different field. I would say that pplwise is a platform for recruiters. Where is their tech in it? We use a lot of modern technology in order to find the right candidates, in order to benchmark, to be efficient in the hiring process, but we don't build our own technology. We use and leverage a lot of technology, and you can imagine that my day is really dynamic because 1/3 I'm traveling, visiting customers or new clients or talent partners. 1/3 I'm in our office in Munich, and 1/3 I'm maybe doing home office. And the most dynamic, I would say, piece and challenging piece, but also the piece that is differentiating us from others is, I think, that we are very good in capacity planning and very good in finding the right recruiters for the right companies. And a company that is right for us means that they have growth ambition, that they are also in need of scaling, ramping up, but maybe don't have the certainty on how long they need to ramp, and then valuing a partnership like us in order to do the scaling for them as long as they need it, and then we roll off again, right? And this is really challenging because you need to be very good in planning, very data-driven expectation management. You need to have the right recruiters ready when they are needed, right? So there are a lot of things going on in the background in order to achieve that.
Well said, Mr. Thomas. You call people wise as a talent partner rather than just recruiting firm. For founders in the audience, what is the functional difference between hiring a recruiter and hiring a partner?
Yeah. So it can be the same, it can be the difference, right? I call it talent partner. Why? Because I train our recruiters, or we train our recruiters. We are already more than 50 recruiters and have the ability to scale to plus 100 in several regions. That we train our people on a systematic approach, meaning we have a lot of frameworks from the finance industry, from the consulting industry, from general management, and overall general thinking concepts that we translated into the recruiting world, which are not taught in the recruiting world. Let's say if you think about a framework in recruiting from a basic recruiter, maybe they are using, not all of them, but let's say this would be a classical recruiting framework, using the STAR method in interviewing, meaning that they are looking for candidates in order to when they ask a question, get a situation, then what's the task of the situation, that's the action, what they took, and then what's the result, right? So they would maybe be trained in asking questions in a certain way or evaluating candidates in a certain way, but also candidates should be trained in answering in the STAR method. Now let's take a pplwise recruiter. We are also doing all these basics, but what a lot of recruiters maybe not doing is a general thinking concept, which is often used in finance or in strategy. It's called backwards planning. For instance, instead of just going into a intake meeting or a kickoff meeting with a hiring manager or a manager that wants to kick off a account executive or sales manager role with you, for instance, in Munich, let's say, right? In order to just go in and ask what are their requirements, 3 to 5 years, language requirements, B2B SaaS, enterprise selling requirements, whatever it is, right? That would be the basic recruiter stuff. But what a pplwise talent partner would do is already going into our platform, meaning we have a lot of data from existing engagements, past candidate interviews, past roles we filled, let's say for account executives in Germany, Munich for the B2B SaaS industry on enterprise or SMB level, for instance, right? Then we would pull data from it and ask ourselves and in our system, okay, how many candidates are on average needed for an OTE on target earning of, let's say, 200K, let's say 120 base, 80K bonus, in order to fill one account executive role in Munich. And then our data would show, let's say this would be 3 days on site or 2 days on site, 3 days traveling to customers across Germany or DACH, for instance, right? And then our data would say, okay, you probably need 15 to 25 recruiting interviews. In order to get to 15 to 25 recruiter interviews, you probably need to reach out to 150 candidates from a sourcing perspective. These are the target companies that are selling to enterprise in Munich, for instance, where you could really target. Then usually when there is a case study involved, for instance, then you probably lose out 50% of the passive talent, meaning the talent that is not actively applying, but the talent you need to source, you need to poach from another company, because they don't spend 4 hours, 8 hours in a case or something from preparation perspective when they have a day job and they are high performers hitting their quota, right? This is not possible. And this is what we try to do all during the kickoff process or before the kickoff process, instead of just going in asking for the requirements, right? That's for me the difference between a recruiter and a talent partner. And our talent partners are trained in that way. And the backwards planning aspect, for instance, in a funnel metric, when looking at averages activities in order to make one hire, or velocity metrics, how long in average a candidate should stay in stage in order to not lose them, or in order to have a good, bad, or average candidate experience, right? These are all the things that we train our people, that we have benchmark data internally. And I would say the average recruiter doesn't even think about in that way often.
Well said, Mr. Thomas. Well said indeed. In the early days of pplwise, what was the hardest lesson you learned about selling your service to cash-conscious, fast-growing tech companies?
Yeah. You already have our website live, right? If you could click on pricing, then I show you.
Yes, definitely. Pricing. Here we go.
Yeah. So you see 3 models here. The recruiting as a service model for one role. That means you can work with us on just one role in parallel, and you pay 4,000 euros a month. And therefore, we fill a role for you. If the role is filled, you don't have extra costs. You open another one, we work on it, right? It's like a mini retainer, a fractional retainer. And on the background, a talent partner is working between, I would say, 8 to 16 hours per week on that in order to fill this role. Usually takes around 30 to 60 days. In Germany, in the US, can be way faster. For instance, on the growth packets, you also have a fractional talent partner for 7,000 euros a month, where we work on 2 to 3 roles in parallel, where you can also make maybe 0.5 to 2 hires per month with this model. And then on the scale package, this is really from 1 FTE upwards. So we have companies like scale-ups like Personius, is a German unicorn, or Uber that expanded into Germany with us and did a lot of regional hiring there, for instance. They needed entire teams. And then it's more the enterprise model where we go into a project scoping call and set expectations, also in a backwards planning logic, in order to first understand what hiring activities do we need to deliver in order to make, let's say, 50, 100, 30 hires. And then we calculate, okay, what should be the recruiter's performance and what is realistic in the market, and then also what capacity do we need and in what timeline we fill these roles, right? And in the beginning, I did not figure this out. I needed to iterate my model, my service, my expectation setting before working with a customer in order to get to this level where we are right now, where we can calculate everything, where we can set the right expectations before we start with somebody based on actual data, not just a guess, before we start a collaboration with our customers. And I think this is why customers trust us so much, because we are fully transparent. We are also fully transparent with case studies in order to show deliverables. Of course, all compliant with data security and not sharing any secrets, but being very much aware of what it takes in order to hire for go-to-market tech, G&A, and operations role in Germany, Europe, or the US, for instance, right? So this is, I think, where we are really, really good at. And when you then calculate it back, always, when you take a cost per hire logic, let's say if you look at the end of a project with us and you spend hundreds of thousands of euros on the budget, it looks like, oh wow, so much going into one provider. But then if you make the calculation on how much hires we made, it's often, oh wow, it's really cost efficient. We just paid on average 3 to 7K per hire because we deliver, right? And if you compare this, for instance, to the classical headhunting model, where you work on a contingency fee and you get paid, for instance, when you make a placement, it's often 20, 30, 35, 25% on the annual salary. And if you hire, for instance, somebody in sales between 100 and 200,000 euros or even 300,000 euros, then these are invoices where you pay 15, 25, 50,000 euros, right? Which is really not scalable. And then often companies have 15, 10, 5, 20 different providers, because every manager has a different relationship with somebody they know personally, and then with everybody different agreements and different terms. And this is where the chaos come in, right? And what we usually see, where the most strategic recruiting teams are going to, they have one, maybe two, maybe three provider in order to all the roles, right? And we are usually one of them, especially when it comes to Germany and Europe.
Interesting, Mr. Thomas. Your podcast is called The People Factor. In your opinion, after speaking with so many leaders, what is the people factor that is most often neglected by first timer founders?
Um, so talking about first-time founders, I think what they often really um, get wrong is that they translate or expect, yeah, they translate their expectations on what they can do by themselves into a role they're hiring for. I can give an example. I think the number one first time founder mistake in sales or go to market is saying, I don't need to do sales. I want to hire somebody that is doing the sales for me, like a founding go to market person, like an SDR or an account executive. And they did not even have product market fit. And then they think, I'm the founder. I have more important stuff to do. And I delegate sales pre 1 million revenue. I think that's a bloody mistake, because if you don't make a million in revenue, I don't think that you really have product market fit. And if a founder is not heavily involved there in sales, of course you can get support. But if you get support and hire somebody there, hire somebody that is more experienced with you in sales, that has a sales, I would say, methodology and framework figured out that is working for your hypothesis in terms of ICP. If you're selling to bigger companies, get somebody that can do medpic medic qualification, for instance, and source deals. If you try to do consumer sales, then you probably need a consumer marketing person, maybe, in order to create demand first, for instance, right? So there's so many different ways on how to approach this. But number one, expecting other people to do the main job, like finding product market fit, biggest mistake. And then second, hiring too junior for the first roles.
Well done, Mr. Thomas. Well done indeed. You see that intersection of founders and HR leaders. Where do those two groups most often misunderstood each other, and how do you help bridge the gap?
Yeah. I think expectation management. So I think that a lot of founders, they want talent, ambitious talent, above average talent right now, and they want to hire the best talent. But they're not willing to, or not aware of what it takes in order to get this talent. Because if you are a no-name startup and you want to hire an account executive from Salesforce, why should they talk to you? Why should somebody go from an organization that is um, established in the market, has a great environment where you can then go everywhere in terms of sales, basically, often? Why should they come to you? So um, also not taking, I would say, the ownership there, and being aware that it takes time to get aware of what it takes and what the founders need to provide in order um, to make to create an environment to create certain I would say hypothesis projects in order to get the best talent for you. I think that's really something where the expectations are not really realistic. And then also on the HR people side, that often um, people get maybe too fast too operationally, and not taking the time to gather data, create insights, and push back, but not saying it's not possible, pushing back with a solution that is fundamentally gathered through a thorough analysis on the market. It can also be just talking to people in peer groups that are in similar situation and had this problem and solved it, for instance. That can be enough already, right? Often, sometimes it's just that founders have certain biases towards certain companies, logos, on universities, whatever it is. There is always something where you can start with in order to get your hands dirty, get some people on the phone, ask some questions, consolidate the data, and then propose a solution. And that's not often done. So I think people get too lazy in order to think and do the hard work instead of just doing some operational work and doing activities that maybe not having a lot of impact.
Mr. Thomas, you build startups and you advise them. What is the single biggest hiring mistake you see? Series A or B startups make the ends up, costing them millions down to the road.
Um, Specifically after a Series A or Series B, I think the biggest mistake is hiring for the sake of hiring. And what I mean with it is often when you raise funds and you sell a plan, basically, you need to deliver on it. You don't know how realistic this plan is, and often it's a big bet. And I think being conscious about when do I need to iterate this plan down the road, when I have more data from hiring the first people, for instance, in certain functions like in tech, go to market, or in the ops general admin functions. Um, and first, maybe checking in and thinking, okay, what do we need to adjust based on the information be gathered now and iterate, and then maybe stop certain roles or double down on certain roles, in order to just go ahead, because a lot of companies then just go ahead and don't really iterate, or the iteration cycle takes too long. And then what I see is that you hire 100, 200 people, and after a year, 70% are laid off again, for instance, right? Because of, doesn't work, course correction. And also that's part of the game. But I think you can be also very efficient with that by not working too much in parallel, because often chaos is then pre-programmed, and there's nothing wrong with chaos if it's controlled. But if it's uncontrolled, I think this can just lead to multi-million-dollar mistakes.
Multi-billion or multi-million dollar mistake. What is a common scaling pain that keeps HR leader up at night and the average employee has no idea is happening behind the scenes?
What was the question again? It was just a small lag. I could not fully understand.
Yeah, what is the common scaling pain that keeps HR leaders up at night that the
Yeah, I think
average employee has no idea?
headcount planning, definitely. And I think that's also the biggest pain for companies, that they don't know when they need which talent, and planning cycles got way more, I would say, short-sighted. I give you an example. Since the war in Ukraine happened, for instance, even governmental organizations, they needed to learn to go from, let's say, NATO planning or German government planning, which is 5 years ahead planned, and they know exactly what needs to happen in the 5 years, and they have a clear ramp up plan and a very stable way of doing stuff, right? Versus Ukraine hit, Russia-Ukraine war hit, and suddenly Ukraine needs support right now. And the same organizations that were used to deliver products, services, projects on a very different way, which were very waterfall, old school, long-term planning, without a lot of ambiguity, need to completely change and shift their planning. And I think this is also what a lot of organizations face nowadays, that the cycles are way shorter in which companies need to operate, plan, and therefore talent and HR leaders have always a resourcing problem. They don't always have the right talent available in the whole organization, but also in a recruiting team that is then delivering the right people. And therefore, we can be pulled in, because with us you can scale up and down in any region, basically. But I would say I maybe also biased towards that, because I have a lot of conversations with people exactly around that topic, because we are so close to that problem, right? Now
Very
you're
well
on
said.
mute.
Very well said, Mr. Thomas. Very well said indeed. And to wrap up our discussion for today, if the job market continues to shift toward AI and automation, what is the new role of HR department in 5 years? Will it look like anything like it does today?
Yes. So I think you need a lot of, or maybe not a lot of, but a new role that might come up is AI operations people, or AI system engineers, that are really making sure that all the workflows, all the activities are done in a very clean, systematic way, meaning that systems like an applicant tracking system, a sourcing tool, an HR operating system, payroll, everything is really set up well, employee NPS service like satisfaction service and so on, capacity planning, headcount planning, that all of this is really set up in its own, very clean, and therefore AI can really be used in order to do something with each other, right? In terms of communicating itself, make decisions or proposals, and then of course the humans can still execute that. I would say that's still in 5 years necessary. But the quality of work can maybe be way more increased, and very simple functions like maybe a recruiting coordinator or an HR ops person maybe is not so needed anymore as today, and they can step up and do other stuff like generating insights, reports, whatever it is.
Well, thank you for that, Mr. Thomas. Can you please invite our listeners to support your business, your projects, or anything you want to promote on Entrepreneurship 101?
Yes, it was really a pleasure talking to you. Thank you so much for the good questions, and was a pleasure talking to you.
Likewise. So where do people can reach you?
LinkedIn, Thomas Kohler.
Yes, people, let's connect with Mr. Thomas Kohler, because if you connect with him, but for sure more and more empowering business like this to rise. So Mr. Thomas, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
What can people see you soon?